Welcome to the Happy in the Mess podcast. We are your hosts, Marlena, Cheri, and Matthew. We are therapists and coaches, and we want to share our own stories with you, as well as the wisdom, insights, and tips we've learned along the way. Thanks for tuning in to this episode. Welcome to this episode of Happy in the Mess podcast. Many of you have been in therapy or will be in the future. Ever wonder what it's like to be in the therapist chair? I'm Cheri, and I'm here with our experts, Matthew and Marlena. We are all therapists and coaches. Today, we are going to take a behind-the-scenes look at what it's like to be a therapist. We've covered some amazing topics on thriving in the midst of all that life can throw at us. If you've missed some of the past episodes, I suggest binging on the collective wisdom of our earlier episodes. And as a reminder, please like, share, comment, rate, review, and subscribe on whatever platform you listen to. So welcome, Marlena and Matthew. I'm so glad to talk to you guys about this today. I know that we talked a lot about coaching on the platform here today, but we all come from the world of therapy, and I thought it would be great to just give our listeners some insight into what it's like to be a therapist. So I wondered if you could just start with how long have you been a therapist and how did you get started? Matthew, you want to kick us off today?
Sure, absolutely. I am just coming up on 10 years for me as an actual therapist. I came from teaching prior to that. So I was teaching, so I was kind of doing almost a hybrid of a guidance counselor, teacher, life planner kind of role. So there was a lot that transitioned into that. And I've been a youth pastor all along, which of course has its own it's gonna be one of those days, isn't it? So
It is.
it has its own way of just kind of bringing in the counseling and getting to know kids and their needs in the process. So I think as I shared in our initial meet stuff, I started off my life in ministry, and so this has just kind of been a process that has happened. And therapy was one of those things that I hadn't even planned. I was working on a master's of divinity. And I found I really didn't like, I always say theology, but I love theology. They're just the theologians I really didn't like. So it just was one of those, like, I just had this lightning bolt moment of like, counseling is the place to be. That's really where I'm comfortable. And so I switched my master's program, went into counseling, and have just done some form of that for about the last 10 years or so.
What our listeners may not understand just in listening to that is not only have you done that, but you have done a ton of other things, writing and speaking and all sorts of other things. So that is your experience with coming to a therapist, your experience of being a therapist brings a wealth of information from lots of different areas of life. And Marlena, what about you? How long have you been a therapist and how'd you get started?
About 7 years now. I got my first license in 2017. And I was also getting a Master of Divinity. I got a dual degree in Master of Divinity. And I thought I was going to actually go into the ministry very much like Matthew. And then, due to how women are treated in the ministry and what they're paid and sort of the box that I felt like I was going to be locked into had I gone that route, decided that counseling was the better route to go to have a wider set of tools to use, see a wider variety of people, not have to come from a certain like theological mindset. And so that really spoke to me. And prior, I was working for the military and environmental stuff and doing the Peace Corps, doing natural resource management, the kind of stuff. And so very, very different previous career, but realized that my skills really were not in international relations or environmental work, but I still recycle. Just want to let everyone know I do believe in that. But that one-on-one work and delving into people's issues, like that became really highlighted for me in the Peace Corps, like where my strength really was with working with people rather than their crops or the land.
You also come to this with a wealth of experiences, lots of variety in your background that you bring to your therapy. I come from a much more
straight path. I was in mental health for 10 years and then went and got my master's and started in private practice. And I've been doing that for 20 years. And I talked to you guys, and you guys have done so many more. It's such a wide variety of things that it's really fascinating. By the way, these guys are some of the best therapists that I have met in the field. So, so I just want to give them a shout out for that. All right. So, what are your favorite parts of being a therapist? What gives you that exciting feeling?
Honestly, being witness to like so many people's stories of growth and change and like helping them along on that path has been really fulfilling for me. It has been the most fulfilling career I've ever had, is watching people grow and change, getting to be part of that process. And just getting the secret window into people's lives, like not in a voyeuristic sense, but in a like, wow, it's such an honor to bear witness to the inner workings of your life. I find the work really sacred, not to use necessarily a religious term, but I do find it sacred and very meaningful.
Yeah, definitely agree with all that. Matthew?
Speaking of sacred, I'm going to go completely the opposite way. I remember watching roller derby growing up, and there was this concept of cracking the whip when one of the roller skaters, typically one of the bigger ones, they'll just kind of plant their feet, reach out and grab their score, and just fling them along, and just like it transfers all that momentum. So everything that the original person did, it transfers over to the one that can actually score and cross the line for that. And I think for me, that's that golden moment of therapy, is just recognizing the privilege of being that point of that person's life where we get to really just kind of delve in, hold on to that thing, and then watch them achieve goals, watch them, figure out who they are. A lot of times, especially with the neurodivergent community, embracing who we are instead of trying to hide or mask or change, and just say, hey, this is me and all my gloriousness, and I'm just going to skate on ahead of everybody.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. Coming alongside and being able to witness when people are growing in such a profound way. I think of this concept that we are each the main character in our story and everyone else is the sidekick. And in therapy, we intentionally choose to be other people's sidekick. So they are on a journey and we come alongside them in that journey for a period of time. And hopefully it's a period of growth and explosive self-understanding and self-compassion, but that we get to be the one who like helps them on that journey as their sidekick.
Mhm.
I'm Yoda, y'all. It's like, yeah.
Oh yeah, I guess I get to be Yoda. That's a cool concept. So, as a therapist, what are the things that you struggle with? What are the hard parts of this job?
Well, it's been a little more interesting in the telehealth world. Some of that sort of self-care had to be reimagined or refigured into my schedule based on working from home. That's created a new set of challenges. I would say like being back in the office had a set of challenges, and being now at home has a different set. Some of them are the same though, like heavy cases. I'm human and they do affect me. And sometimes that I can carry the weight of a client's story or trauma with me post session. And so I've really found ways I've actually tried not to book clients back to back anymore, so that I have a little bit of breathing room, either to write the note, grab a snack, sometimes go on a swim or a walk. Like for me, movement's a great way for me to like break up the pace or break up that heaviness that I might be feeling, and also just reset my brain for the next person. So I found that had been extremely helpful. Whereas when I was in the office, I might have scheduled everybody much closer together because I didn't have that freedom to move around and do something else, put in a little laundry, cook some food. But now that I have that, it's actually been better for my own mental health. Just have more breaks, quick breaks, but breaks just to give myself a break. Before going into the next session.
Yeah, good.
I think for me, I reflect back. I was just talking with somebody about this. Was when I first graduated, I could not find a job to save my life. I was getting turned down for $12.50 an hour entry level jobs. Partially because I was coming at this later on in life. Because this is a second-ish career for me. two plus. I was coming, with about 10 years ahead of everybody else. So it went from like this really sparse look of things, and now you fast forward and trying to find enough therapists to meet the needs for people, whether it was through the pandemic or just through life happening. There's a lot of weight and a lot of pressure that comes, I think, from being in a helping profession, and trying to balance out wanting to do our best for our clients and balance our self-care out in that same process. And ultimately that, like, I don't want to turn people down. I don't want to, let anybody go. I want everybody to get the help they need, but realizing that I am only one finite person with, a finite amount of mental energy and physical energy and spiritual energy. And I have to maintain that well. And that's I think that's probably one of the hardest things of this job, is trying to toe that line in the appropriate manner.
It's really cool that we have all of these abilities and wanting to really be able to help other people as much as possible in as many ways as possible, but then also knowing that we're not just sitting in a chair listening to people's problems all day, that we show up and have a sense of presence where we are pulling from at least for me, I am pulling from every part of my life experiences, every part of my education and training, every scrap of idea that I might have picked up in even just like watching a TV show. I might pull an idea or a wording or a concept. And so when I am in a therapy session and I am with an individual or a couple, it's like they have access to this huge database of all this wisdom and knowledge collected from every source I've ever had contact with. And my job then is to be present and read what they need and then pull that from whatever recess of my brain that might be stored in and put it together in a way that meets them exactly where they are at that moment. So this isn't really a job where you sit in a chair and you listen to people's problems. This is also interacting in a very present way that gives them an experience that changes how they're looking at things. So that in and of itself means that this energetically is a very draining process that we need to constantly be balancing out with getting enough in for ourselves so that we have that to give to them. Probably one of the biggest struggles I've had is when my own personal life is happening while I'm dealing with and working with clients. I have kids, so I've always needed to check my text messages in between sessions. And there has been some pivotal key moments where I was in a session, checked the message, and it wasn't a crisis. It wasn't like I needed to cancel the next session, but I needed to put aside whatever that was to then go and be present in this way for someone else. So what do you guys do to prevent that burnout? I mean, this is a really challenging and demanding job.
Well, there's some excellent episodes on our podcast about preventing burnout and recovering from burnout. I would highly recommend you go back and listen to those.
Yeah,
because we have to do it, Yeah. No, I think it's a lot of it is it's raising awareness. I think the biggest thing is just making sure you call it burnout. We start to it's a very difficult thing to catch sometimes because it feels like exhaustion. It feels like I'm being short-tempered, or I am half of a rear end at work, or whatever it may be. Like, and where you can catch those things, and if you can catch them in those moments of, oh, I'm experiencing burnout, and I think for me the biggest thing is, okay, let's let off the gas a little bit here, and restructure. And for me, it's really parts work. Like, what do I need right now? What, um, I will always go back to my values. What are my values as a person, as a therapist? So one of my strong ones, no matter what, is always creativity. I'm a terrible maintainer. I have to create. I will start a video game 20 times and do a new character every time because I love the character creation part. So I know I need to do that. And in practice, if I get away from that, things get off balance. So I always have to go back and ask that question, what am I creating? And if there's something in the way of it, we need to get it out of the way and start working. I've got my whiteboard right here and I'm working on a project, not literally right now, but basically right now, you know.
Mm. Well, I say too, like the thing I lean on heavily is my own counseling. Like I am not above getting my own therapy, and that has been enormously helpful, not only to prevent burnout, but it also gives me a ton of new ideas. So when you were talking about that reservoir of information we provide to our clients, like also comes from my own therapeutic work and working with other counselors. I find that extremely helpful. I also have like a weekly check-in with a peer counselor, and we sort of do like we pseudo counsel each other. I wouldn't say it's like a full-on clinical session, obviously. It's just, but it's that kind of friendship time with someone who really gets what it is I'm going through every week. And I find that extremely helpful. I mentioned movement earlier as being like one of my go-tos for like letting that energy out. All it takes is like 90 seconds for emotion to fully move through the body. And so like finding ways to tap into that to release that energy out of me has been extremely helpful. So I still practice my meditations every morning. And then I've been, really leaning into my prayer life, and I'll throw up, to the universe, like good thoughts for my clients too, because I recognize that I am just a human, and some things most things are bigger than me, including, other people's issues. And so recognizing that I need help from a higher source to do what I do on a daily basis. And I'm not, I'm not afraid to say that. Like I do sometimes say prayers before sessions and after sessions, just to recognize that like, this is bigger than me, and I'm going to do my part, and I'm going to be an open vessel to whatever I can do here, but recognizing that I'm not doing the actual healing work, that happens on their side.
That is such a great list. And I have to say, I dip into it to every one of those things that you guys mentioned, the creativity and the prayer and um, the therapy. I'd add coaching. I know all of us have done some level of coaching in addition to our counseling, and peer groups and peer support that help. Like every one of those things are things that I have done to some degree. I also would add to that I have to have time to process. Yesterday was a really heavy day for me. I saw a bunch of couples, and several of them were in crisis. And I got to the end of the evening, and I really just needed to sit and feel and veg. I just needed to process all of the stuff that I had taken in during the day and be able to let that go. Marlena, you mentioned thinking about clients between sessions. And I think that is part of this work as well, is that we think about our clients. We wonder how they're doing. We pray that they're doing well or handling something better. We send out positive thoughts to them. We might do research on something that they're struggling with and intentionally seek the information. So being a therapist isn't a job that you go to where you're there for your hours and you put in your time and you go home and that's the end of it. It really is more of a lifestyle where you're constantly taking care of yourself, not just so that you are okay, but so that you also are able to care for the people who have entrusted their well-being into your care. So it's definitely different than a lot of other jobs. Marlena, you mentioned being in therapy. I know I have also been in therapy. Matthew, I believe you have also mentioned that as well.
That's been more of a struggle here. I was when I was a kiddo, and I don't know that I have necessarily done as a full professional therapy as an adult. I am not opposed to it. And in fact, when my mom passed, I actively sought to find a good therapist and just really struggled with a lot of the same systemic issues that our clients struggle with. Just trying to find somebody within our income brackets or insurance brackets or insurance limitations, and trying to find somebody that I could connect with. And I will fully admit I struggled with that, but also I believe that it is a good cause. So,
Yeah. So because we're
Yeah.
therapists, we don't get therapy for free. There isn't like a network where we just help each other with that.
That would
Although
be
maybe
great.
that's not a bad idea. What advice do you guys have for those who are considering or looking for therapy? Right now, it is really hard to find someone and hard to find someone who has openings, number one, but number two, to find someone who's really qualified and has the skill set that you really need.
I joke around, like every once in a while somebody will ask me for a therapist, do I have a recommendation? I tell them very coarsely, because I am me, or bluntly, that picking out a therapist is kind of like picking out your underwear. You really don't want somebody to do it for you. You need to try on and see what fits well for you. And I think that's one of the biggest things is to go online and to find that person that you feel that initial connection with. And there's ways to narrow it down. You can go to your insurance and narrow down who's in your area. Thankfully with teletherapy, there's a lot of openings with that we wouldn't normally have. But I always say find somebody that speaks your language. If you see them, and that's what I look for, right? Like who is speaking my language. I saw a lot of cookie cutter profiles, and I was like, okay, I know this is the challenge of knowing how the sausage is made, so to speak, right? Like, all right, I know what this process is going to be. This doesn't connect with me. I need a person that I can connect with on that. And I think people need that. They need to have that. But I would also encourage people, you also want that person that's going to challenge you. We don't want to, as a therapist, I fall into this sometimes of just let me nod and hold space. But at the same time, we also need to nudge towards health as well. And you want that person who can challenge you to do that in a way that's affirming and validating to you.
Yeah. Marlena, what's your advice?
My advice is if you have a friend or someone who is having a really great experience with their therapist, see if you can get in with them. I mean, that is the last route I took was like, I heard actually the last few therapists I've had, because I like to try different people and depending on where I'm living and whatnot. And if I have like a colleague or a friend talking about the insights they're gaining and the progress they're making, I'm like, who's your therapist? Give me their number. And I go and I get in on their calendar. I mean, that has worked for me several times. And then I really like, well, because I am a therapist, right? So in Psychology Today, I'll go in and look and I'll click the parameters I'm specifically looking for. I know some people don't actually know what it is they're looking for. So it's going to be more of a let's see and try things out. But if you know that you've had a trauma and you want someone who does EMDR, you can actually filter. And I like that the tools on Psychology Today to do that, to find exactly, or you need a couples therapist, you can filter out for that. And so I encourage people to go on there for your area and be like, what is am I looking for? And then you can find out too, and just not search anything specific and just see what people offer to give you an idea of what's out there. And people who click all the things like may not actually be an expert in all the things. Like, so I try to my Psychology Today profile is just click on the things that I'm really good at and like really zero in on, so that people know like if this is what you want, this is what I offer, and I'm not going to offer you 15 other things that I only do half well. So that's been a learning experience as a counselor, is like niching down. But yeah, that's a great tool. I think Psychology Today and other therapist directories. And I have a really great relationship with our EAP, the ones we work with, employee assistance programs. So if you have an employee assistance program, they can be very helpful in matching you well with some therapists. My employee assistance program that we're partnered with know my skill set really well and funnel in clients that really fit that. And so far, it's been a great working relationship. So EAP is another good resource.
Yeah, EAP often gives people free access to a few sessions for free, so you can try out a therapist and decide if they're a good fit. There's a few ways to do that. I offer a free phone consultation and I talk to people for about 15 minutes. And usually that's about the process of therapy, but I know that a lot of people are getting a sense of how I talk and the way I handle even just these everyday sort of how you get into therapy questions. And so it gives them a very good taste of what to expect from me. the other thing is, if you start with a therapist, you do not have to tell them your most vulnerable, hard things in the first couple of sessions. It's one of the barriers when people are shopping around for therapists, is that it's such an outlay of energy. It feels so vulnerable to go in and tell a therapist all your stuff. So give yourself some space to meet with them a time or two before you would delve into all of that. They're not expecting you to come in and tell your hardest, deepest, darkest stuff in the first and second session. So go and meet with them and see if they're going to be able to help you before that. Now, I do specialize in couples therapy, and it is a pet peeve of mine. Get a couples therapist who is certified and trained. This is specialized work. And if you go see someone and they see a couple of couples, then you may be putting yourself in the hands of someone who likes to work with couples. Maybe they even have some natural ability, but they don't have the in-depth experience and skills to really help you in the most efficient and effective way. So I know other therapists have very different opinions about that with couples therapy, but so I'll just own that as mine. But that is one of my pieces of advice. So what if someone is listening to you and they're like, man, I would really love to get on your calendar. Can you walk through like the difference between therapy and coaching and how people can work with you and how that's different?
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's my therapy is I've got my website set up that just kind of funnels people based on need. So like if you are out of state, if your need is more present to future focused, that's very much a coaching issue. And that funnels over to the coaching, and all of that's just kind of automated in its system, because I own my practice. It's just me. So I have to duplicate myself as many ways possible, and technology is fantastic for that. And likewise, the funnel also leads to counseling, and counseling really deals more with past into present with a little bit of future for me. The way that I do things is just we really work on kind of healing that. Now, for me, that's only for people who are in Ohio and people who are in Florida, because those are the states that I'm licensed in for now. Thankfully, with counseling, there's a interstate compact coming up. Hopefully, please, bureaucracy, get this stuff together and get it caught up with the technology. That's my soapbox. Um, our technology has vastly outgrown our boards, I think. Much love to all of them and what they do, though. But no, and that the counseling, you just go to my website, and just what you said, Cheri, like if you need a consultation, you schedule a consultation. Make sure, like, let's talk. Let's make sure we jive together. Let's make sure we've got the right skill sets. Make sure we're comfortable with each other. If you want somebody who's this nice, neat, buttoned up, perfect background person, you'll be with me for about 3 minutes and you'll realize like this is not my guy. But likewise, if you want to talk sci-fi nerdy stuff along with therapy, we got it. So that's me, at least. Marlena, I know you've got a different setup with your
Yeah, I
practice.
work for a group practice out of North Carolina. And so that is full life counseling and recovery. And you can call them and they can set you up. And we have a load of wonderful, very skilled therapists there. And so therapy is really where I do a lot of trauma work, addiction work, this heavier kind of stuff that's really not appropriate for the coaching realm, which is more about can be how do we level up in various areas of our life. And sometimes it's also, we do look a little bit at the past. Sometimes it's informing present decisions, but it's more of I'm all about forward movement, whichever modality I'm practicing, coaching or counseling. But counseling tends to be a little bit, I would say, more of clinical diagnoses, whereas coaching you may not have issues that fall into any diagnosis, but that are still bothering you, that you want to move through and work towards goals in life and dreams. So I kind of see it as like almost like we do some counseling work and then coaching is kind of like a later stage. Not that I can technically we're not allowed to do both like with the same person. I just want to make that clear. Like if I were to coach you, then I couldn't go and counsel you and vice versa. So really understanding what it is you need, and then staying with that modality. So yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I'm not taking coaching clients right now. I also want to say you can go to coachmarlena.com to like get my free meditations and look at my work and some places where I've been, contributed to articles on certain topics. But right now I'm not taking new coaching clients.
Yeah, thank you to both of you. I do my therapy practice is in West Virginia. As of the first of the year, 2024, I'm hoping that the compact will be in place and I'll be able to take people from other states. That's going to be like 30 different states that I'll be able to do therapy with. My coaching is programs, workbooks, journals, and courses. So that is a little bit less hands-on. It's like when you're in therapy, you're sitting right there with your therapist and you're working on specifically your stuff. And the coaching is much more for couples who need some guidance and support, but don't need that one-on-one support to get where they need to go. So the coaching is at cheritimco.com and my couples therapy practice is at couplescounselingcenter.online. So I want to thank you both for being here and talking about this. I think a lot of people have curiosity about how to do this, and I think you guys did a great job of kind of breaking this down and what it looks like from the other side. I think that often helps people make that transition from thinking about going to therapy and saying, oh, I get it. This is how this can help me. So thank you both. And thank you to all our listeners for tuning in today and for helping us grow as a podcast. We will see you next week.